Welcome to week 7, December 10th through 16th. And this week we start the Civil Action and Political Discourse unit. And in this unit, we're going to talk about how people in communities and groups in communities make a difference in their society. So you see that for this unit, for this week, we have Section A. So all the activities for Section A on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. And then Thursday, you go in Thursday and Friday and do Section B. Then next week, in week 8, we'll have Section C and D. And then that will wrap up the course. So this is Civic Action and Political Discourse. So if we move down to that unit, here we are. So in the unit, we're talking about, as I said, a variety of things, but the actions of citizens is essentially what we're going to talk about, and how the citizens influence our governments. So if I go to the write-up, of course, I want to make sure we know the questions. So in the introduction section, what are the two forms civic action can take? So civic action can take on many forms and varieties of impacts. But some of the actions are local grassroots efforts. Then others would be national efforts. So there are local grassroots efforts. That means localized, starting at the bare bottom of a community. And then the efforts that are on a national scale. So those are the two types. The local efforts to facilitate change, and the national efforts to define social principles for an entire society. So those are the two types. And before we jump into this, just want to remind you that this is the next to last week of the course. You should know that by now. If your grades are low, and I suggest you go in and do the work for the assignments that count the most. Get your grade up over 595 points. Once you do that, you're guaranteed to pass. Then, if you have time later on, you can go do more work. Okay, back to this unit. So in this unit, we're going to look at how citizens impact public policy and law and things like that. We're going to explore how propaganda and other tools are used to support special interest groups, and also analyze the impact of different communications. So lots of information in this unit. So in the whole unit, the roles of public policy in shaping everyday lives, the role of grassroots organizations, examine the U.S. Political philosophies and principles on civic involvement. So you can see all of this. And then finally, describe civic involvement in different parts of the world. So we'll look at it globally too. Okay, page 4. Remember, of course, these assignments are not what we're doing. Go to the grade book to look at specific assignments. Okay, page 4. In watching the video, what is the general attitude of Iranian youths towards their culture and government? So that's right here on page 4. So this is a video about Iranian youth. And you learned a little bit about them in the last unit or 2 units ago. But go ahead and watch this unit. And this is actually the question you're going to be answering. General attitude of Iranian youth toward their culture and government. So you want to look for this response as you watch that video. Okay, activism in America. When did it get started? Well, it certainly did not get started with Martin Luther King in the 1960s. Activism started in the New World when the colonists were trying to get out of the grips of the English government, right? They were activists at that time. So that's when it all started. But modern activism, I mean, it has happened all throughout history, but certainly the civil rights movement that Martin Luther King was a part of was a big part of political activism. Let's look at the class connect write-up and describe the start of the civil rights movement. So if we think about the civil rights movement, people always think about Martin Luther King as the father of civil rights. Well, he really wasn't even the father of it. He was a leader of it, that's for sure. But the movement began in churches and streets in the Deep South, meaning Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, etc. And it was a grassroots political and social movement that started in dozens of small communities. They had rallies, fundraisers, meetings, etc., because they were upset the way that African American people were being treated. So you can see it started out as a small grassroots movement, and then it became a national movement, and ultimately it caused laws to be changed, caused people to change the way they looked at other people, etc. So you can go listen to Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech right here, and I would encourage you to do that if you have not done that. So in this section, in section A, we'll look at the roles of public policy in shaping everyday life, the roles and strategies of political action groups, the role of grassroots organizations, look at the ways influence national government and international organizations establish individual rights, and look at political lobbyists. Now here's a little video that many of you may have seen before. This is how a bill becomes a law. Schoolhouse Rock video. Go ahead and look at that if you're not familiar with how, and even if you are familiar with how a bill becomes a law, because it's important when grassroots organizations and civic action starts to make changes in society, then of course laws have to be changed so that society changes. So it's important to know how something becomes a law. Let's go back to the Class Connect write-up. How is public policy often determined? So that's on page 4. So if you look at page 4, public policy is the set of laws, plans, actions, and inactions that are taken by government that address what is happening in society. Often public policy is determined through citizen research, such as public opinion polls and position polls. So that's the answer to that question. So people in the government, they'll want to see what citizens think about certain things, and once they know how people think about certain things, then they'll start gearing their legislation and laws towards how the majority of people think. Hopefully it's going to be how the majority of people think. And you can read down here more about what public policy is and how individual groups have tactics and tools to promote the main things that they want. And here you can go to the website, and there's an organization called the Gallup organization that does all these surveys and different things. And of course, around the election, there were lots of surveys. Your family may have been called, your parents may have been called on the phone to do telephone surveys. There are lots of things happening like that. Here's a tutorial about how a bill becomes a law. And things interesting here. Every year, over 10,000 bills are introduced by the congressmen and senators. But in 2005, 2006, only 482 out of the possible 10,000 were enacted into law because it's such a long, tedious process. And some of the bills aren't important for a variety of people, so they end up just being squashed right at the beginning. So go through this little tutorial to see what you remember about how a bill becomes a law. And this is the procedure for the state of Washington to pass a bill. So you can go down this whole list, and once you go down that list, you can compare it to what you learn about how a federal bill becomes a law. And they're probably very similar the way they work. Okay, page 7, now we're going to talk about different types of movements and what's called a grassroots movement. If you look at this, action towards your bill. More importantly, grassroots is a movement that generally starts at the lower level. If you talk about grassroots, think of your lawn, piece of grass, and the roots are the lowest level, right? Well, grassroots initiative, just like this say down here, they're at the local level. Volunteers get together and get the information out, and then the grassroots movement can become larger and larger. So that's what that means by grassroots, meaning it really means just starting at the lower level and then growing up eventually. And you can see all of these things that grassroots movements do. Very simple, but that really gets the ball rolling until things can really emerge as being public policy eventually. Some organizations that started out as grassroots, Sierra Club, National Rifle Association, and others. Yeah, this is page 9. Let me go back to the class, or this is page 8. Let me go back to the Class Connect write-up. Okay, page 7, so the grassroots imply, we talked about that, okay. So page 8, this is your first assignment, contacting your representatives. So look at this worksheet, and it'll tell you what you need to do about finding out information about government representatives that you have. So you'll go through this, there are websites you can use, what district do you live in, what are the names of your representatives, etc. So you do all of that information and then turn that in. You even go and look at a bill that somebody has sponsored. So do all of that work, and you'll learn about a little bit about civic action. Okay, page 9, political activism. And political activism, that means how do people take action? So active, action, similar words, right? And people that are taking part in activism are called activists. Sometimes that's looked at as a negative term, but it's really a positive term because it's a person that is trying to do something they believe in. Now, there are many ways that general citizens can be activists. They can have protests. You can see what protests are: declaring disapproval or objection. Use information, ideas, rumors, etc. They can hold demonstrations, so like marches, things like that. And they can boycott to do something. And lots of times boycott would be refused to do business with a certain business or something like that. So those are 4 ways: by protest, propaganda, demonstration, and boycotts. Those are 4 ways that people are activists, how people can show their displeasure for something. So if I go back to Class Connect write-up, you'll see right here it says, what are the 4 main strategies used in political activism? Well, I just mentioned those, didn't I? So this is talking about what people can do. And of course, we've learned a little bit about civil disobedience. Dr. Martin Luther King stressed that. And you can learn a lot more about how activists try to go through the courts with lawsuits and things like that. At page 10, there's a video. Go listen to this video and watch it. It's about Ron Paul. And of course, he ran for president, and he actually got quite a few votes this time. But Ron Paul ran in 2008, and his campaign would be called the grassroots because it's just basic level, just trying to do some really interesting things out of the ordinary in our political system. And after you watch that video, just think of some of these questions related to what Ron Paul tried to do in 2008. And he tried to do the same thing in 2012. Political activism at your door. This is a discussion. You're not going to do this. We skip the discussions in this class, so don't worry about that. Now, the First Amendment and civic action. Of course, that's one of the challenges, right? When does First Amendment go away when somebody is involved in civic action? Are you breaking a law that affects someone else's personal rights? Then you can't do what you're doing. So there are different things that one can do that relate to the rights that we have. And we've learned about the right to petition. We learned about that as part of our protection under the law, civil rights, and things. So you can see how sometimes those types of things can go against what people are trying to do, and particularly in the way that they try to do it. If people try to do things the wrong way and protest against government in the wrong way, then they could be breaking laws. And this talks a little bit about how people can sometimes get people out of office, and that's what we're going to look at in a minute. And this is on page 13. Let's go to the Class Connect write-up. And yeah, page 13, in the petition to remove Governor Davis of California, what was the nature of the petition? What were the people putting their signatures in support of? So California actually recalled Governor Gray Davis. So you can read about this and what the people were trying to do. Look at this, they had 897,000 signatures. they collected twice that many to get him out because he passed some laws people didn't like and different things like that. So watch the video, and then you're going to answer these two questions in the Class Connect write-up. So watch the video and then watch then answer those questions. But you can see that people can have lots of power even at high levels in government, because he was the governor of the most populous state in the country. Page 14, we don't do the video homework quizzes, so don't worry about that. Page 15, the self-check, so go through that, see what you've learned, so play that game. Page 16, let's go to the Class Connect write-up. And page 16, explain what a lobbyist is and what a lobbyist does. So you've probably heard the word lobbyist, but what do they do? So here's a little avatar activity. You can watch the avatar, or you can look at the PDF down here and answer that question in the Class Connect write-up. What does a lobbyist do? Or what is a lobbyist, and what does a lobbyist do? That's the Class Connect write-up question. Now this is more about lobbyists, and there are all kinds of lobbyists, but political lobbyists are some of the strongest. And what they try to do is they try to influence decisions made by the government for their own causes, or for things they believe in. Or even there's some lobbyists that get hired just because they're good lobbyists, and they might not even believe in what the organization wants to have done. In fact, I would think that back when they started to really push hard against tobacco companies 10 or 12 years ago, I imagine some of the lobbyists against the tobacco companies were probably smokers. So lobbyists, a lot of them just do it for the money. And let me find that there's a question about this. I'll write down here. So it can be argued that lobbying is undesirable because it allows people with particular interests represent a minority to gain special access to lawmakers and through contributions and favors have controversial relationships. This happens in politics a lot. So that's why lobbying and lobbyists can be considered undesirable, because these people that represent just a minority, they might have a lot of money behind them, and they could actually influence the way congressmen and senators vote, or even the way the president chooses to make his decisions. So that's the answer right here about why lobbying and lobbyists, some people consider them undesirable. You can see that even in 1995, the government had to make it against the law for make it unlawful for lobbyists to not register. So lobbyists have to be registered now. Before, anybody could practically be a lobbyist. Okay, page 18, special interest groups and the political process. Let me go back to the Class Connect. Actually, it's page 19. Research one special interest group and describe what the group stands for and supports. So here we are, we're talking about special interest groups. And that's actually, it should be this page, page 18. And here's a list of a bunch of special interest groups. So again, what I'd like you to do is you're going to explore one of those special interest groups, and you're going to write down what they believe in. So those are all of their links. The Political Action Committee, you can go through that tutorial to find out what, and they're called PACs, PACs, find out what they are. Then finally, a web quest. And actually, I don't think you have this web, or yeah, you do. No, you don't have this web quest. You have the one about contacting a representative. You don't have this one. And then finally, number 21, you have the Activism in America quiz. So that's right over here. Now I want to go back to the Class Connect and make sure, like this one right here, I originally said page 19. I'm going to go ahead and fix that, because that actually was the answers are on page 18. So I need to, not the answers, but the links are on page 18. So now I have that fixed. Okay, that's all I have for you. So I look forward to your work coming in, and I'll get this recording posted. Thank you. Bye.